Hey guys, welcome back to the 10-8 Fightcast. Dylan and Trevor here, back from a little bit of a break. I've been on vacation, hanging out with my family. Trevor, you experienced pro wrestling for the first time, live.
Oh my god.
You liked it, didn't you?
I get it.
Friend of the show, Bobby Wasabi, now tearing up the indie scene on North Carolina
He
circuit.
has a really dope special rules match going on Sunday.
Right, yeah.
It is pretty much, it's like actual striking with actual submissions. They're doing like 10 rounds of it. Like it's called like Ring of Sport or something like that, and I am fascinated by it.
That sounds awesome.
And I'm like, I think I might have to go see his match because it was a little rough, but like just his match I think would be, I have to see it, I think, man. Like,
yeah, it seemed like from the highlights that he's taken to it like a fish out of
this
water.
This is the closest thing to MMA I'll ever see Bobby Martin do.
And I'm
like, I gotta see this.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
that was wild.
I think that when I saw the highlights online and Instagram, I was like, "Oh, damn, he's doing that.
He's doing it.
He's doing like a full blown Muay Thai fighter gimmick in pro wrestling,
bro.
He's working people with leg kicks and switch kicks and shit. Yeah,
and like he even said, he described like the process of it, and I'm like, man, your ability of like knowing how to take control of a fight really helps you take control of like improvising the wrestling match, of like how they talk about, where I'm like, oh, so like there is no script and you guys are kind of going at it, but like
it's flowy, especially at that level.
It's like a competitive and I was like, oh, like
storytelling,
it's
like competitive storytelling,
and I was like, oh shit, and like I've heard that in words like that before, but it didn't make sense until I saw it. You know,
true.
It's kind of like NASCAR.
You get the carnival effect,
man. If you see NASCAR in person, you're like, got it.
I get it.
Fuck yeah.
Right, Watching it on TV.
And watch this.
And I think the same can be said for fights, too. Like, you know, a lot of times you're dating a girl or you're trying to, talk to somebody about what we do, and you're just like, I do this and this, and they're like, oh, I've seen UFC on TV, and they're like, I'm not the biggest fan of it, and then they end up going to a live fight. Well, Nicole Briggs, our friend.
That's right. Also, our friend Nicole is like, she's now like hopped into her first like sparring session.
After seeing a live fight one time.
Yeah. But it is like, like the people that you get to meet is what makes sense. Now,
exactly.
I got to meet the other wrestlers, the people that put it on the show. I saw the venue, and I'm like, oh, the venue is also where they train at, and I see how they change around. I'm like, oh, I should do that with a boxing gym. Oh wait, I'm just like, oh man, like that's how they do it in California. So it made some like gears get going.
Yeah, when I was in Austin and training at 10th Planet, I noticed that they have like an event there every Thursday night. That's like a jiu-jitsu tournament, but it's every Thursday night with the people that train there and some people from other gyms in Austin.
Wow.
And it's just like live stream on the internet, and there's like a chat that you can donate to individual fighters.
Yeah, they had really commentators there, and I could see them like getting into it as well.
Yeah, like, Bobby was trying to get me in on some of those shows, and the scheduling just hasn't worked out yet.
Oh,
but I think it would be.
I already said I was like, give me time, man. I can't get into announcing right now. I was like, but dude, let me know when you need someone to fill in.
Right, that would be so dope, right?
I would love to call your name out again, dude.
To get that experience.
Because I've coached him and I've called his name out at a fight one time.
Right,
when I flew back and I called it, and I was like, oh, that was really fun to call out for Bobby, man.
Yeah.
That's my buddy. That's a blast.
It helps you get into it a little bit, right?
Oh, it's great, yeah.
But yeah, guys, welcome to the 10th episode of the 10-8 Fightcast. Kind of a monumental episode. A lot of podcasts that people start that are weekly, especially, they fall off after like 2 or 3 episodes. So we appreciate all of you guys who have been here since episode 1. And to celebrate our 10th episode, by the time this episode goes live online, there will be social media pages for the 10-8 Fightcast on pretty much every social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So find us on all of those things. We'll probably be 108 Fightcast because you can't do hyphens in most of the usernames. So look for 108 Fightcast on social media platforms. After listening to this episode, that would be really great if you give us a like, a review. Some of those websites like Facebook do reviews and stuff like that. And it just helps the show get more eyes on it. So that being said, what we're going to be doing this week is talking about fights gone by. We can talk about fights coming up, but the UFC's putting on a pretty big stinker this weekend.
I haven't paid attention to it. Like I've been kind of.
But we both watched 274, right?
We did.
Oliver Eversketchy?
Yes,
okay, cool. So let's talk about that card first.
Didn't really watch the co-main event. Kind of like kept putting together a highlight reel of the Michael Chandler knockout. Like, so
right.
Really,
it's hard to follow that up, especially when fights
it was going on in the background, and I was like, oh, I see what's happening here. Like, it's like I used to do that with boxing matches where I'm like, okay, I can see how this guy's going to kind of like finish the rest of these rounds out. I mean,
we can get
anything
to
can happen.
the co-main
yeah,
for
we'll
sure.
Talk about it, yeah.
On the prelims, especially on the early prelims, the only thing that I really wanted to make reference to was because of the card change up and kind of the last minute scheduling things that were going on. Andre Filo, who was originally supposed to headline that prelim card, got bumped all the way down to the headliner of the early prelims and knocks out Cameron Van Camp in one round. Vicious KO. This guy's got serious power at welterweight, and he's a problem. His boxing is problematic, to say the least.
That was a holy shit. Like when it just happened. Like he just popped that hook out there, and I was like, God damn!
Instantly cut the lights off.
Yes, like it was a great setup. Yeah.
Tracy Cortez beating Musagato by a unanimous decision. I thought Tracy Cortez was going to walk through here. She looked completely different.
She did.
She looked completely different.
Well, neat. She's doing everything in this fight.
Right.
Like she wasn't like in her previous fights. I think we might have talked about that. Like she gets stuck doing one thing at a time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, she did like everything. She knew where to go next. Like that was cool. Like she made and I think it's like her being around like Brian Ortega's camps,
right?
Seeing that experience.
There's a reason why Brian was able to get as far as he did, and maybe even one day will become
like
if
champion. You're new to sparring and you see then like a heavyweight champion of the world sparring, then you're gonna go, oh shit, those are habits I should copy. Like if you happen to be around that kind of environment. So I think like her being around that newer training environment is really paying off for her.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a pretty. The odds were actually pretty even.
I was referencing someone else. That was
right. Yeah, anybody, any champion caliber elite fighter. I think there's no disputing.
She's been through like both of like Ortega's like champ camps now.
Right.
Like they've been together for a while.
There's no disputing that Ortega is one of the best featherweight talents.
Oh yeah, so she sees that. She's like, okay, yes, let me work like that.
Our boy Blagoy picked up a boring unanimous decision at heavyweight.
Yeah, I really
that was a tough one, but
man,
we were absolutely correct about Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell. What a hellacious fight!
Yes.
The fight was 2 minutes and 14 seconds long, and so much shit happened in that little 2 minutes and 14 seconds. That's my fight of the night, and it got fight of the night from the UFC too.
That was like a little like roller coaster ride of like that, like
super
wham wham, like what is happening? Like that's,
very back and forth too, like a wild round, one of the most wild rounds of the year.
And it was great because it was so short and so much happened. Like your brain, my brain kept like kind of like replaying the fight like for a while after it was over.
Mine too.
Whoa, neat.
I watched it with my grandma, and she was like, "That what just happened?" I had to explain it to her like 3 times. Everything that happened.
Talia just sat there and went, "I'm so fucking glad I'm not a guy." And I was like, "Right, dude."
It's cutthroat out here. It's cutthroat. Francisco Trinaldo somehow still doing it.
Doing the damn
all
thing,
these years later, and he's like 42 is what they said on the broadcast.
Yeah,
and he's still getting wins.
Danny was not happy.
I actually thought that he did a little bit better than the judges gave him credit for.
Yeah.
I did think the judging was a little whack at this.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that. Like, for instance, I thought Norma Dumont kind of getting the split decision was a little... she kind of got a little dominated.
That felt iffy.
But yeah, Danny Roberts did really well. And I believe he even knocked Trinaldo down, or at least rocked him a couple of times.
Yeah, like he did good, and that's why he had some frustration. I think he was frustrated that he just couldn't put him away.
I mean, that's the thing about welterweight. Trinaldo, formerly a lightweight, now still continuing to do his thing at that level.
You saw it in boxing for a long time. People go up in weight to lengthen their careers.
Yeah,
they don't go down in weight.
Who's got the longest careers in MMA?
Right,
heavyweights.
Yeah,
they last the longest.
I mean look at what it's like. How it's helped like Canelo. He just kind of recently ran into that wall of Bivol and just like it happens. But James Toney is a great example.
James Toney is a
holy
good
shit.
Of that.
The dude was like a super welterweight and then became a heavyweight champion. Like what the fuck? Like,
that's a big leap.
Yeah, and hey, BJ Penn, we've seen him fight Lyoto Machida. And
local fighter Caleb Harris, middleweight champion for a promotion in Pennsylvania or Virginia, I believe, and then a heavyweight champion for Fight For It here. So it's just some people just shine when they go up in weight. RDA, Cowboy, the list goes on. Welterweight action between Randy Brown and Chaos Williams, and we were right about this one too. It was a scrap. Yes. Putting this as the first fight on the actual pay-per-view card was a genius idea. I think the UFC just really believes in Chaos Williams' ability to bring an exciting fight, but we kind of saw Randy expose something in this fight that I don't think a lot of people have noticed about Chaos so far, is that he can't get hit as much as his style would suggest that he can. When you fight like that normally, you are an indestructible chin type of guy.
Chaos has been knocked out. He's kind of like that's why it's like Chris Lieben had to change his game so much. You know, Chris could, like, he reminds me a lot of like a more well-rounded Chris Lieben, like a little bit like, I mean, still reckless, but not as reckless, but like almost like that same like, they're gonna throw bombs, they're gonna fight a wild fight, and they're gonna put themselves in front and just make it a fucking fight. But like Lieben had a special kind of chin, but striking wasn't as pinpoint as it was now.
Randy almost finished him in the first round.
Exactly.
That's pretty crazy.
Like, Chaos, like, he'll walk into some tight counter punchers now, man. Like, the level of tight... And we saw, Chris Lieben get exposed by Anderson Silva back in the day. And Chaos is, like, getting really close to being on the wrong highlight reel. And he's been highlight reeled like that.
Yeah, definitely. And he got close to coming up again this weekend.
The level of counter striking in MMA is just skyrocketing.
I feel like if the fight starts off, obviously he's a fast starter and he's got a lot of power, so if the fight starts off and he gets a big exchange, it's like the other guy begins to respect and kind of worry about his power. Mm-hmm. But if the guy gets hit and then hits him and kind of wins the exchange, it's very hard for him to get going. I feel like in this fight, especially in the second, third round, he just couldn't get out of first gear.
Yes.
And I know you've probably seen that with some of your fighters that you've coached. Like, they just have that night, they show up and they just can't get out of that earlier phase.
I was like a borderline like neutral person, like, when I fought, and that's when I was like, man, like, don't know if I should be doing this.
Maybe it's the same for me, right?
Yeah, I was like, I'm better. Okay, I can get a hit, but like, man, better things to do.
OSP versus Mauricio Hua. Stinker! Absolutely called this one.
That
boring
was
as fuck.
Two uncles fight at a barbecue.
Boring as fuck. Honestly, really would love to see Mauricio never fight again. He says he's got 2 more fights on his contract. So
God damn, really?
Whatever. But
the dude's got
like
tits.
OSP, what happened to what happened to the game plan? What happened to the power? It was just like pretty much exactly what I suspected it would be. A lot of holding, a lot of clinching, a lot of pushing, and you're like, uncle fighting. Yes, uncle fighting is
uncle
a great...
Fighting. I went, man, technical uncle fight, bro. And they both had their slides on the whole time. Like, they weren't flying out of their shoes to hit each other.
For real. They were both flat-footed.
That fight ended and, like, no one's really too, like, their clothes were still clean.
Grade A crap fest. But the card bounced back. I don't have much to say about OSP versus Mauricio other than it sucked, but I got a lot to say about this one. Chandler versus Ferguson.
Holy shit.
Woo!
Goddamn.
Woo!
Like, I made a little like Chris Tucker highlight of that fight of like the which one y'all hit me of from Rush Hour, and I was like, I spent my time editing that while the next fight went on in the background.
It's weird how
I was happy it got 5,000 views, and I was like, oh yeah.
Oh, on TikTok?
Yeah, and on Instagram Reels, and I was like, I put it up there, and I was like, oh, cool, 1,000 people. Like, I guess I should do that on Fight Nights more on this.
I put the picture of Tony unconscious next to the picture of Yamcha on Twitter and got shit.
Virtually identical.
Got Yamcha, motherfucker. But one thing I'm seeing online in the aftermath of this fight is like Tony saying he wants to keep fighting and may go to welterweight and hasn't sparred in 3 years. That's a pretty big headline.
Yeah, someone made a good point. I don't know who it was. It might have been Sean Strickland because he is just the most vocal about people's shit that he doesn't like online. But someone was pointing out that they're pretty sure Tony stopped sparring because he was probably getting beat up more in the gym now. Like, he was always known for being someone, like, he would clearly get his confidence by beating up training partners.
Right.
And he would talk about it. He's like, yeah, I'll go fuck.
Which is why he never went to a big gym.
I broke my student's ribs. And someone was like, yo, that's fucked up.
Yeah, you don't want to...
Everyone at the press conference was like, yo, why would you say that? And, like, but Tony, and, like, you'll see it, like, the guys that will get confidence by beating people up in the gym, they can then go out and fight, But when, like, it comes to, like, a fight becoming a fight, like, they have a tough time with, like, the training partners that can, like, stay a whole round with them, that can push through, that can out-jab them, that can out-strike them. Like, someone was saying Tony's probably getting beat up in the gym. And I was like, he might be, like... He might be done with damage, but he might be like not being able to hold up in the gym as well either.
For me, it's a big fucking red flag when someone is like as good as Tony is and even is having title fights and doesn't have a striking coach or doesn't belong to a big gym.
Yeah.
Think about what Michael Chandler does every fucking day. He goes and has rounds with Kamaru Usman, like, you know, and
that dude
everybody
has
else
not
else at their gym too is phenomenal. You know, he has access to Gaethje. He has access to all those people through Trevor Whitman.
You know how that first round was? It was probably the first round of what it's like for him to spar Kamaru fucking Usman. Like, it was probably like, that's probably how his rounds with Burns go at the gym. Like,
well, and here's another thing I'm seeing in the aftermath of this fight, in terms of the public, less so from Tony, but in terms of the public, the response is, wow, Tony looked really good until he got knocked out.
Yes.
And I'm like, did he? Did he? Because he kind of got double leg blasted.
Yeah,
by,
that's
Goldberg
the thing.
style.
I was like, okay, he looked good for 45 seconds,
and then got taken down.
And got manhandled by Chandler's wrestling. I was like, oh goddamn! Yeah. Like, Tony's gonna like, and Tony's
one of the best back players.
What I love though is that Tony looking for that shot range is what opened up that front kick. And that's what I love about that front kick.
Yeah, because well, it's also
like Tony really had to think about, oh shit, I can't get shot on. I have to keep jabbing this guy. And because he knew his jab, his hook, and his cross were landing, and like he was like, oh fuck yeah, I need to stay right here, and I'm good. And then Chandler went, man, fuck it.
He should
have a new Nike show.
The first exchange where Chandler fires that blast double sets up the stage for the next attack. At the beginning of the second round, it's 17 seconds into the second round, which means that he's been thinking about that since he landed that double. And also, it's like, yes, Tony's one of the best guard players in the game, and he was looking for elbows, but he wasn't able to cut Chandler. He wasn't able to do meaningful damage. Yeah. So where did Tony look good? When did he look good because he came out there and did his idle stance? He
had a couple good moments.
I guess.
That was it. Like, I was like, no, Tony looks like he should not be in the top 10 right now. Like, I hate saying that because I was barely an amateur, and then you have Tony going like, he was world class, you know. Now he's not. Oh, I guess he still is. Like, what do you think? Maybe you could do welterweight in Bellator?
I mean, it depends. I mean, I think the UFC wants to keep him. I think the UFC likes to keep him around.
Man, I'd like to see Tony versus Rory in the PFL.
Because even Dana was like, yeah, he looked good until he got knocked out. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is this a Truman Show? Am I seeing a different fight than everybody else? Like, I really did not get it at all. But anyway, it was a great fight. Michael Chandler continues to be such an anomaly to me in this weight class. Like, is he actually one of the best in the world? I mean, yes, his wins are over like Dan Hooker and fading Tony Ferguson, but the fights that he's lost have been pretty fucking competitive.
Yeah,
and they've been against the two best guys in the world.
Yeah,
and I just don't. I don't know. When I saw him get like his leg kicked out from him against Brent Premise, I was like, damn, this is probably the beginning of the end of Michael Chandler. You know, like this is, you're getting fucking finished by Brent Premise.
In that fight.
That was the most cursed. Like, we talk about Bellator cards being cursed. That was the most cursed card because right before that, Aaron Pico made his debut and got starched. And then Michael Chandler, who's this hype machine, comes out there and is putting it on Brent Premise, and then one leg kick sends him out of the fight.
Yeah.
And then they pull a stool out from under him, and he bumps his head.
I gotta say, it's been really nice to see Michael Chandler's career unfold like it has through Bellator, and to see him still making a splash like this in the UFC. I'm like, fuck yeah, like, good for him, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more, but yeah, I'm so.
But yeah,
fascinated.
no, I see what you mean by like, people's comments about like Tony looked good, and I'm like, man, now like rewatch it. Like,
I'm fascinated to know what they do with Chandler next, because to me he's the hardest guy to match make now.
He has to be.
He's the hardest guy to match make, especially if Beneil versus Islam is going to happen. It hasn't been rebooked yet, so I think Islam's team is probably holding out, trying to get that big boy fight.
You think Chandler versus Beneil would happen?
Yeah, that's a fight that could happen if Islam ends up fighting Oliveira.
Yeah,
but maybe Conor versus Chandler would be dope.
I feel like Chandler could beat Beneil but couldn't beat Islam.
Tony versus Conor at 170?
I don't know.
I mean,
that has cowboy vibes. That has Conor
it's
cowboy
giving
vibes.
Cowboy. Yeah, as the kids say, it's giving cowboy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I just think that both these guys now are going to be pretty tough to matchmake going forward because, you know, Tony's obviously going to have to fight down, and to avoid fighting down, he's going to go to welterweight.
Yeah.
And he's definitely not going to go to a big gym.
No.
Like, if you have those title fights and don't go to a big gym, it's a red flag for me because it says, like, this guy doesn't want to go spar the best people in the world every day, day in and out, day out. And that's problematic.
Yeah.
If you want to be champion.
Tito Ortiz was one of the first guys to build world-class coaches in, like, an isolated place.
I think that after this
people
fight,
should follow that more, I think.
I think after this fight, Tony should try to be a little bit more realistic about his expectations of himself and his career and what's left for him.
Who reached out to go train with him?
Oliveira. And he said, no,
yeah.
You're the champion of my division. I'm not going to go train with you. I want to be the champion.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be more realistic. I'm hoping he'll just
that's why I was like, you talked about realistic, and I was like, wait, let's go back to him slapping away the champ's hand. The champ is like, all right, you can get it again, I guess. Like, you know.
Then we had the crap fest of all crap fest. The stinker of the century, if you ask the commentary team, Rose versus Carla Esparza.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, me eating humble pie saying that Carla Esparza could not beat Rose Namajunas, even though I don't think she won this fight either.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I kind of watched this fight in the background. I saw how it was going, and I saw like it kind of playing out like that, and I was like, oh, this is like if you saw like Floyd fight back in the day, and like, you know, like he's going to try and out-jab somebody during a fight, and like, you know, take it the whole fight.
So
and I was like, I'm gonna play with my phone and highlight this video real quick and do that instead.
Here's what I think we're going for. We're going to jab and not do anything that can risk us getting taken down in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And then we're going to turn it on. The problem is Rose never turned it on.
Yeah.
But if you look at the fight from that perspective, you can see that Carla was getting frustrated because the strategy was working to an extent.
Yeah.
Especially in that first and second round, she was like lunging forward. She did a Superman punch from like halfway across the octagon, and I was like, damn, the commentary team is acting like nothing's going on, but I think Rose is like executing a strategy that's working right now, and we'll see what happens when the third round comes around, and then it just never turned on.
I think she was trying to bait Carla to shoot farther than Carla wanted to shoot from, and like Rose stayed on that like outside fencing range and was just like, well, if you come here, I'm going to counter you. I think they both knew each other. Like Rose didn't want to get touched for the wrestling, and then Carla knew she didn't want to get countered, and they're both like, man, fuck.
I think Rose is starting to worry about longevity too. She's had 2 fucking tough fights back to back, and
she probably
was just like,
we saw it happen to GSP. I mean, it happens to everybody.
She might have seen Carla as a little bit beneath her and was just like, I can cruise through this girl, like not taking a lot of risks. And even after the fight, she was like, I won the fight, and I'm like, I understand you can feel that way in a fight this close, but it's like, how can you publicly say that after a performance like that? You know, even if you do feel like you won the fight and there are people online who think you won the fight, it's not going to win you any fans to go out there and act like it was a huge robbery when it was that close.
Right.
And it was only that close because you allowed it to be.
Yeah.
You know. So, Carla Esparza coming back 8 years after losing the belt and then regaining the title, getting married the next weekend with the title around her waist with 0 marks on her face is an interesting story, but in the context of history, this fight may very well be remembered as the worst fight in
who comes out on top still? The manager.
Yeah, that's true.
Like they have the same manager.
Yeah, that is right.
Carla and Rose have the same manager, so the manager still wins that one.
I wish that you would have. I wish that I would have known that you didn't watch the fight as closely as I did, because I would be interested to hear what you thought about the corner advice that Rose was getting, because
that was
Pat was saying
that's been a big topic popping up. Yeah, Pat and Trevor were saying different things. Yes,
and it was like almost like Trevor was being pushed out of the corner as the fight went on.
Yeah,
he said less and less.
Yeah,
and it's like, I like Pat Barry. I think
Trevor was giving her the right advice.
Yeah, he was telling her to turn it on.
He was like, and that's the frustrating thing. And I was like I've gone back and I've like listened to I will always go back and listen to Trevor's commentary during a fight. Mm-hmm. Like I always go back and listen to that kind of stuff. And that's why I was like, wow, Trevor said the right things, and that's frustrating. Like, because it was like, man, she listened to the boyfriend coach instead of the coach.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when if you're cornering somebody and you have they're like, why are you listening to the teammate and not the coach? Like when you have someone maybe over talking you in the corner, it's like, no, you need to be listening to me, asshole. Then afterwards the fight, then it's like, hey, that's also how fighters have to, I think Rose had to relearn, like, oh, I have to go back to listening to Trevor in the fights. She has to listen to Trevor Whitman in the fights, not that, like, that's how it needs to go.
Right.
Yeah. I think she had to relearn that.
It's so hard to explain to people the nuances that people navigate in the dynamics of the relationships between the corners and the fighters and how complicated they are if you are just a coach and a fighter, let alone if that's your son in there. Or if it's your wife, or your girlfriend, or your husband, or your daughter. Like, it's very difficult to explain to people how impactful that can be in the moment, because in football, basketball, volleyball, there probably are moments like that at the professional level, but they're one player out of a billion. Yes. Whereas in fighting, it's a very common thing to see a husband in the corner, a brother in the corner, a husband in the corner.
You see it a ton in amateur fights. Like, I mean, like, you'll see it, like, on bigger, like, pro levels, too, but, like, it happens all the time in amateur fights, because sometimes, like, a lot of times, like coaches that do have to run their gym full time.
Silas and Gabe Muscat. There's even fighting brothers, fighting siblings, brother and sister, the Scoggins, the Lees. I mean, there's that whole, like, clan and dynasty mentality behind martial arts, and usually when martial artists have kids, the kids grow up in the martial arts gym and they start doing stuff to keep themselves busy, you know.
Yeah, people like that. It's a tough thing to break down, and it's that's a wild example, but like, that's why I love them to death. Like, they also just work well that way,
right?
And it is a very interesting dynamic in every group, and like, some people have to, like, some people do well not being coached, some people do well being coached, you know. And everyone's, like, little approach and pathway to it is different, and coaches have to know that too. Like, I've got some guys that'll just be like, I say this, or I say this too. Like, this person will listen. Like, I know if I have, like, Hunter or Vic in my corners, like, with me, I'm like, hey, give them advice on this. They'll listen to you about this. But that's because I established that relationship inside the gym of, like, who else do you want to hear? Like, who else do I know could give you good feedback, and we're all on the same page? And I think that because Trevor and Pat have been, like Trevor's doing a lot of stuff. Like, he's got Justin Gaethje, he's got Kamar. I mean, like, he has that focus. Like, you saw, like, he's kind of gone off to, like, he has his own art studio and design studio now, so you can tell, like, he is coaching and doing other stuff. And you know, you can see, like, Pat Barry has stayed his, like, motivational, like, hey, you're doing great. Like, he was a cheerleader. Yeah,
especially with Rose. And it's hard to be anything else when you're in a relationship.
And that's why it's like, you know, she knows, like, Pat is a good coach. Like, Pat and Trevor have a great relationship.
He should probably be outside the cage.
He should be inside the cage, but not in front.
Yeah,
the big thing, exactly.
You hold the bag of ice.
Exactly, and it's not like Pat Barry.
Give Rose her water.
Pat Barry is phenomenal when the fight is going down as well. Like, he does give great advice, but in that corner, you know, she should have been listening to Trevor. Trevor
He's the mastermind for a reason.
He is, and like, Pat should have been like the ice behind her. Hey, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah,
and then you're going to hear Trevor. You're going to focus on Trevor, going like, you need to make sure you're firing here, and then Rose will be great with what she fires, and like, that's how that. Boyfriend, girlfriend, like, coach related. That's how that, like, Trev should have been here, Pat should have been here, not the other way around. Like,
that's tough.
So, like, I did look into that. Yeah, like, I stayed attention to that. The fight, I was like, man, there was.
What's there to pay attention to?
And so that's why I was like, okay, I'm gonna study this. Like, I don't care about it right now. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, people watching.
It was like the inverse of Talia's last fight.
Yeah,
it was like. In Talia's last fight, there was a ton of action, but a lot of it was subjective as to how you could score it.
Yeah.
In this fight, there's zero action, and it's extremely subjective how you could score that action. Do you give more credit to Rose for being able to stifle Carla for most of the time?
Because, like, people can sit there and say, like, hey, Carla tried to push the action.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, literally, all I saw in the background is like, hey, Carla was stepping in more.
Right.
Like, and guess what, man? Tough thing. Like, if there's nothing going on, pressure is fucking pressure. Yeah. Forward pressure is what wins fights. Like, octagon control, foot. Like, hey, if there are very little strikes being thrown, and
that's exactly why
but you are still pushing someone back, dim mock, force, whatever the fuck it is, you know, and like they're okay, like they're staying away. Then cool, they're not engaging. They're showing, like, that's like the when you look at judging a fight thing about jiu-jitsu matches, like the judge's advantage and stuff like that, of like, okay, you tried to go for submissions, like, yeah, you had control, but you just hang out. You tried to do, it's like, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, for sure. That, like, and does that make, like, that's That's what I saw. And there's like that subjectiveness of like, if those were mainly like stand-up judges that came from a stand-up viewpoint, that person pressed forward the whole time. That's going to give you like that advantage. And then, like that's how I see it of like boxing, kickboxing to jiu-jitsu.
Speaking of jiu-jitsu. Charles Oliveira retaining the title against Justin Gaethje after getting knocked down twice again.
Justin Gaethje, thank you for encouraging all of my students to do jiu-jitsu.
He can't keep getting away with it.
Yeah. Well, like I told my students, like, wait, how often does he do jiu-jitsu? I'm like, oh, he boxes all the time. Like, that dude just does his jiu-jitsu during camp.
He's got boxing and wrestling in spades, but the jiu-jitsu game is lacking, which is how Khabib beat him, too.
Yeah.
Khabib was like, I can't stand and wrestle with this guy. I got to take him to the ground and use grappling. Like, I've got to use...
Chucky managed to beat Justin with his good habit of, like, if you get hit, turn it into a fight. But, like, Charles knew that. What Charles did is... he smacked the bull on the ass and was ready for the ride. Like,
yeah, for sure.
Like, he literally, like a fucking cowboy, slapped the bull on the ass and then jumped on. And I am like, man, what a bad motherfucker for knowing to do that to Justin Gaethje.
Oliveira losing the title due to a weigh-in discrepancy, but...
man. Like,
it sucks.
Whatever.
Like, it definitely sucks. I don't think anybody, especially, doesn't view him as the champion, especially after this weekend. So
especially after several other fighters missed weight, also by 5 pounds.
But now there's the opportunity. He gave the UFC the opportunity to create an interim title, and that's what really sucks about this, because you know they're gonna have Islam versus Beneil for the interim title,
I think,
or some stupid ass shit like Chandler Conner.
Man, you can really sell Charles versus Conner.
You could, yeah.
Because he doesn't have a title, but he's the motherfucker of motherfuckers
but
right now.
Then the title's not on the line.
No, but it's Conor and Chucky.
Right, but I don't think Conor's coming back for that. I don't think Conor...
Oh, you think he just wants to come back for a belt?
I mean, I think he could have any warm-up fight that he wants.
Yeah.
If he asked for Tony tonight, they'd give him Tony at 170. Or whatever weight he wants, you know? If he wants an easy fight, he can get one, but I think he wants to fight for the belt. And I think if they were like, hey, Conor, what if we did a 155 interim belt, you versus Chandler, and have Charles fight Islam in the meantime, just fight him in a 3-round or like a 5-round, and the winners fight
Charles
for the undisputed title.
Islam in a 3-round fight. Interesting.
Well, I mean, it really goes to how does the UFC feel about Charles as champion? Do they take advantage of the fact that he fucked up? Because every time... there was a long time... Khabib's obviously a megastar now, but the UFC was afraid of Khabib getting the title because of how good he was and how lackluster his style was. So every time he missed weight, every time he had an injury, they used it as an opportunity to sideline him or backburn him as long as they could, which is why it took so long for Khabib to get to the title. So, does the UFC like Charles Oliveira? I think they probably do, so I don't think they're gonna create an interim title in a matchup that is potentially there to screw him, unless it's Islam versus Beneil, because Islam is managed by Ali, and Ali is so good at getting his fighters interim title matches that they don't deserve. He's amazing at it. It's his number one talent. It's his number one talent as a manager is he can get you a title, and then once you have the title, even if it's an interim title, you still get the champions clause in your contract. For life, that's a big pay bump, So even Chris Weidman is still making money off the time that he was champion. And he defended the belt once, and he was champion more than 10 years ago. So it's one of those things where lightweight is still to the most interesting division, but Oliveira's on such a wild ride right now. He is on such a crazy tear, and I still think the matchup that I want to see is him versus Khabib, but I'll settle for him versus Oliveira. Him versus Islam. But I don't want to just put Islam in there right now. Yeah. I want him to fight Beneil or Chandler.
Yeah. Or I know a lot of people are saying they want they're calling for Islam for the title. Like, man, give him one more.
You know what's fun? Chandler versus Poirier.
God damn, yes.
Chandler versus Poirier. Yeah. I just thought of that. Fuck the interim title, fuck the title. Speaking of how you matchmake Chandler, if you can convince Poirier to stay at 55 instead of going to 70 like he's talking about, then him versus Chandler would be
Fuck
fucking
that.
awesome.
Him and Chandler at 70. I don't give a shit. Like, I'm one of those people, man, where it's like, I would put the UFC 4 game on like random autopilots of people versus people. And
Right.
Just go like,
we talked about that last week.
Yeah, and I'm just like, man, fuck it. Like, I feel like those two guys, like, realistically, they're like, man, I say do this at welterweight and see what kind of cash grab we can get. Like, if they fight each other on like as the co-main on like a Conor card, or that could co-main its own pay-per-view.
Cool.
Does that make sense? Like,
dude, that's
like,
the co-main to like Conor versus anyone is a crazy card already.
Unreal.
like
$120 probably, you know? Like,
they could get away with it for charging that.
And imagine that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and what if they signed for a 5-fight non-title fight? They would still get paid like a title fight. Those two have
on a pay-per-view, yeah.
Well, actually, well,
Dustin
does.
Yeah,
and
Dustin
Chandler,
does.
I feel like, you know, he's just still like, hey man, I'm fucking worth it. Clearly, like he's such a company guy that he will.
He took a pay cut from Bellator to go fight in the UFC because he was like, this is the last span, this is the last era of my career. I want to go do it, even if I make a X amount of money less and can't get my sponsors or whatever. I'm just going to go do it.
Yeah,
and he's definitely taking care of himself with his bonuses.
Yes,
you know, like he's gotten fight of the night versus Gaethje. He got his performance of the night against Tony. He didn't get a bonus against Oliveira.
No, I thought they still got like a fight of the night bonus. I thought.
Let's see.
I was pretty sure they still had a fight of the night bonus.
It should have been.
Like, I know, like, Charles got a knockout of the night bonus. Or no, yeah. And then Chandler, I thought there was a fight of the night bonus.
Oh, so yeah, there was a bonus on that.
He's had a bonus, a win bonus in every performance of his career, right?
That's in the UFC.
In the UFC, yeah.
Fucking nuts.
But I mean, even Bellator, man, I was like, God damn.
Performance of the night, knocking out Dan Hooker.
I'm from North Carolina,
obviously.
The Bellator.
In the Bellator.
In the Bellator.
I saw Alan Crowder fight in the Bellator in the middle of the NASCAR ring.
They compete in the Dimsdale Dimmy Dome. Oh yeah, that Bellator. Oh, were you at the Bellator at NASCAR?
Yeah, I was there.
You were there.
I got a media pass.
Did I see you there?
I
remember seeing Tito's big ass head, and I followed him everywhere because like his head would block out the sun, and I could stand behind.
So back then,
I didn't know you were there. Like I was. Back then, I went to there, and I went to. There were fights in Greensboro at a strip club parking lot on the way back.
I went to that too.
Kevin fought.
Yeah, Kevin made his MMA debut.
No shit, you were there. God damn,
I was
so funny. Yeah.
I was in the back of the strip club, or in the lobby of the strip club, wrapping Kevin's hands while Gene filmed. Or I was helping Gene film.
So
Neil
I came
wrap
up and
his
talked
hands.
to you. I was just probably too far out of my fucking mind because I was like, oh, it's a party day for me.
But here's that Bellator thing's a funny story. I just was working with Gene, and me and Gene had made like 4 or 5 highlight videos for like local fight nights, and somehow, some way, I knew a girl who knew a person from the PR team on Bellator, and I just like DM'd them and was like, here's my stuff. Can I get a media pass? And they're like, yeah, just come hang out, make a video.
Yeah.
And then Gene couldn't come. So I just was walking around, no video camera, being like, I'm media. And they're like, what kind? I'm like, I'm writing a story for a magazine. Yeah. I'm just like making shit up. Yeah, just walking around.
I have a blog.
I'm Tommy Toehold.
I'm Tommy Toehold, and you just like hold this is my lanyard in front of your face.
I was thinking I'd pull out the Tommy Toehold cartoon face and just like, see you recognize me now, you know?
That'd be some shit.
So outside of 274, which we both watched, you didn't watch the Fight Night Blachowicz versus Rychik?
I missed it. No, I was at I went out to Mania, had a little weekend away, needed a couple days off, and then was at a wedding out there. Really, really good weekend. I'll show you a video of 2 of the bride's cousins dance fighting at the wedding.
Dance fighting? Capoeira or break dancing?
A little bit of both. I think they were on acid, man. Like when the ceremony was going on, they were like, yeah, fuck yeah. And I was like, bro, like you need to put on more clothes at a wedding, man. Like, yeah, it was a good time. Anyways, but yeah, I saw the Johnson knockout. I got to watch it. Like, I managed to put a TV on inside the house, and I was like looking at the window, going like pretending to socialize and go. Fights in the background, got it, cool. Like,
getting back to his winning ways, finally.
Man,
breaking
good for
that
him.
4-fight skid.
That was a little like, that was like a Rudy moment where it's like, Yeah, fuck yeah, man. Like,
Yeah.
good job.
Just
dude.
that guy.
Yeah.
He's just one of those guys that puts on good fights, and you're like, you see him on a 4-fight skid fighting some guy you never heard of, and you're like, damn, if he loses this, it might just be the end.
Might be the
but
end.
usually when a guy like that has a knockout like that,
yeah,
they keep him around. And to know in that moment that guy's probably going to be sticking around is like, it just makes you feel good because you're like, this guy gets to continue to live his dream.
Michael Johnson and Bobby Green fought?
I don't think so.
Man,
but that does sound familiar. That sounds like something I've thought of before. Or
either we've thought about it or it happened.
Yeah.
Man, maybe that's the fight to make right now then.
Maybe, because Bobby Green
Dude, that could easily highlight or like co-main at fight night or something like that, or even like lead a fight night if they needed it to.
Yeah, definitely it could. It could be a big fight night. Bobby Green's got that potential. Yeah. So, let's see here: Michael Lamash Johnson versus Bobby King Green.
Hell, even if it's a rematch, I say fucking do it.
I'm finding people on forums talking about this matchup all the way back in 2013, how they'd like to see it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh shit. So maybe that's why. Like,
so it's been something that's maybe been talked about, right?
Like, man, I say that's a great fight to me.
Yeah, it'd be a great fight. Ryan Spann also had a great win over Ion Kutelaba. Mm-hmm. Davey Grant with an extremely violent KO.
Heard about
at
that.
Bantamweight.
Haven't seen the replay
yet. That dude is crazy. And then Jan Blachowicz picking up the win by injury.
Okay, yeah. So I do want to hear. So I heard that Jan was getting tagged up.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
So what? Raychik, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but
was it did Raychik like break his leg on a check?
No,
he said
after he tweeted after the fact that the same injury from camp reemerged in the fight and forced him to like quit out. Then when the UFC released their medical breakdown of the card, or their medical thing was released after the card, like it normally is medical suspensions, it was listed that he had an ACL tear.
Oh, wow.
Which means that it didn't re-emerge. He tore his ACL in camp and then fought with a torn ACL until his leg...
Was it noticeable in the first... What round was it? Third?
Let's see here. Yeah, third round. It was probably the combination of throwing kicks, getting kicked, and then just the amount of wrestling and work that he was putting on it.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where he threw a leg kick and then stepped back to the side, and you could see his leg kind of buckle. Because if you've ever had an ACL tear, your leg
see it happen in
turn
sports.
like this.
So what? He threw a kick, and did he did he push off into the kick, or he was coming back?
The kick was on the kick was on the foot that was not torn. Okay. So he put all of his weight on the torn leg, and you see his leg.
That's common to see like in kickboxing a lot. Yeah. Like if you've been around kickboxing and Muay Thai a lot, if you have a partial tear in your ACL during camp, it'll show up in the fight like that. Just because like you've been taking care of it in camp, or you've been training your ass off. But like if you take care of it and you don't push it, like yeah, and then it's like okay, like you might have prevented it from fully tearing. That shit, when you are pushing adrenaline to your body and you are trying to fucking rip a leg off with your body, you are probably going to blow your knee out if you didn't blow it out in camp. And like you see it in wrestling too. Like if a guy keep his ACLs for a tournament. Yeah. Hell, actually no, in wrestling they blow their ACLs out. Like there's a guy that just won like nationals last year or 2 years ago on 2 blown out ACLs. Did you hear about that? And I was like, never mind. Like, no, wrestling's gonna just put duct tape around their knee and just keep fucking.
There's a dude named Keenan that trains at Elevate, or he was training at Elevate for a while, but he won the Toro Cup Blue Belt Invitational with no ACLs.
Yeah.
And he's a black belt in judo and wrestling guy, so it's like
different mentality,
different build, different, yeah. UFC putting on a fucking shitter card this weekend. Like, just
I don't know anything about it.
Clearly trying to meet their broadcast
demand. Should we get somebody to watch Never Back Down this weekend?
Oh yeah, that might be fun.
We gotta find a Generation Zer.
So I have
an old man.
I have stuff going on like during the day every day this weekend, but nighttime might be working for me.
Oh, you're free? Yeah, hell yeah.
Because I'll be like right down the street on Saturday, but I'll be there till like 8 p.m.
Oh, nice.
And then I'll be free. But yeah, maybe we can do something like that.
Yeah.
There are 2 fights worth at least mentioning. Probably don't need to talk about them too much. Holly Holm's fighting Caitlin Vieira in the main event.
Okay, yeah.
So you kind of know what to expect there. Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Michel Pereira. I think that's a
okay.
banger.
That's a fun. That's a fight night matchup.
That's gonna be a banger. Yeah,
that's one to tune in for. Yeah.
Holly Holm always, has a certain amount of value name wise that she brings to the card, and I also think that she's generally pretty underrated these days.
Yeah.
Like it's not like her only bad loss is to Jermaine Durand to me, and it was like a fight that most people thought she won.
Yeah.
So
she got hurt like after the bell. I remember.
Well, 3 times.
Yeah.
She got hit after the bell like 3 times.
Couple times. Yeah.
But yeah, it's Caitlin Vera's good, man. She's fucking really
tight. I like
good.
Her. Yeah.
And Holly's got to be ready, and I just don't know.
Yeah, I'll definitely try. I'll probably catch that fight.
Yeah, at least that fight, at least the co-main and the main are super worth watching. But outside of that, I thought that since it's our 10th episode and we've got a little bit of time left here, that it would be fun to get into the origin stories of how we began training the martial arts and kind of leading up to what we do now. So, Trevor, how did you get into martial arts and what did you love about it when you found it?
So my first martial art, which wasn't considered a martial art, but now everyone does treat it like that, is wrestling. I mean, very competitive sport.
Vision Quest is a martial arts movie. It's
there
very clearly a martial arts
Warriors
film.
is a martial art movie about street fighting.
That's true.
So I got to see UFC 1 like when I was a wee little kid, and like it was something when we're still in Virginia Beach, and my dad put it on TV, and I just went, what the fuck is this?
Right.
And that just got me fascinated with, like, at a young age, like anything like martial arts movies, TV shows. Like my mom even thought, was like, yeah, Power Rangers is cool as shit. Like it's martial arts and a good message. Like, so I've always grown up watching it, and then I got into wrestling, and I was like, oh neat. Like I had 2 siblings, we'd always roughhouse and stuff like that. I got into like I got bullied as a kid, but I also like didn't like back down a lot, so I got beat up a lot. And then I started wrestling. I was like, oh, like okay, this is like competitively getting beat up, neat. Like, and it just became something to do, and it started making me like think differently about wrestling. I ended up wrestling up until high school, and then in middle school, like I tried out like a couple traditional martial arts places while I was still growing up wrestling. I always went back to wrestling because I still liked the physicality of it. I'm the son of a pro athlete, so like I was like, I understand, like if you're like really good naturally, like you should want to be a world champion at that point. Right. If you find out early on that you're okay at it, you probably won't be a world champion, but you can still do that fucking thing, Yeah. There's a lot of people that love to surf that aren't pro surfers. Like, and I was like, oh neat. Like, so I enjoyed wrestling. Like, I would still go to tournaments, and it was a fun way to get away out of the house and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I want to try their martial arts. When I tried karate, or I tried like taekwondo, or I tried like whatever I saw, like, yeah, maybe I'll try out that stick fighting shit. I was like, no, like
Eskrima,
yeah, because like there really wasn't much to choose from around here. Like Remo was like the first Muay Thai and BJJ spot in this area.
Yeah,
and they opened in like '95, I think.
Yeah.
And so like it wasn't until like damn dude, this is like YouTube wasn't a thing yet. It was like when I started getting into like karate, so like it was hard to find schools in the area without internet. Like I'd look up phone books, and there's places like Team Odyssey out in Wake Forest, and I'd go out there and be like, shit, this is cool, but god damn, like I'm an hour and a half from here.
Yeah,
like,
and you're also a kid at the time.
I'm also a kid at the time,
yeah.
So like I started. My mom did find like a karate place around the corner when I was in high school, and it's like this guy had like a little bit of a kickboxing thing. He was trying to put it in like 2 of his classes in the evening as like a thing for his black belt, and it just like he definitely wasn't a coach. He's like, yeah, it's like how you guys spar with punches and kicks, and that was my first exposure to kickboxing. I went, oh fuck yeah! Like I don't like that kata stuff. Like you can just punch and kick, and just like wrestling, I'm like you're close to close with somebody, and I'm like, well, how the fuck do I get you from here to here? But with this, it's like, how do I get you from here to here, and I keep you over here, and I keep hitting you? And I'm like, okay, neat. And with me, like, having, like, the littlest one of, like, 3 kids, and, like, getting into fights as a kid, I was like, oh, neat. Like, this is a fun outlet. And then I tried out a smoker. I was like, I found out about a smoker, and I tried it out, like, 4 or 5 months later, and I was that fucking guy that shouldn't have been there.
That should not have been there.
And I was like, weird. Like,
how old were you?
16.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was 16.
So really should have been there.
Really should have been there. I heard like a couple dudes I knew that were just outside of high school were gonna go to it. I told my mom I was going to a Young Life camp thing.
Sick.
Yeah, like
good cover story.
It was a gym in Virginia, and they had moved all the equipment outside. and they put us on a U-Haul truck, so they just had chairs around the ring, and I was like, man, am I about to get my ass beat? Like, that's my vibe. They were like, all right, welcome, so you guys know, like, this isn't like, you know, we're not doing fight, because this is, like, we're in a state that still has no commission.
Yeah.
I've got a different, 18 was a different type of, oh, fuck me, I'm not a man story. So yeah, there I am, 16 years old, I'm just gloves and shin guards, and I'm like, oh, fuck, wow, actual 16-ounce gloves are really fucking heavy. Like, and there I am, I have my American kickboxing pants on, and I just got my ass beat for like 3 rounds, and I was like, I tried to throw a spinning back fist at one point, fell over
the
from
classic
that.
example of
a
dude person who shouldn't be there is when they throw a spinning back fist. Yeah, man, a bad spinning back fist.
Bad. And I remember just like at the end of that, like the dude was like,
I'm just thinking about all the MMA fights we've called where a guy just does a spinning back fist.
I'm not ashamed of it.
It's okay.
But it was funny because when I talked to the guy that beat me up, I was like, you should have done this and you'd have knocked me out. And he just went, wait, what? And it was another like 17-year-old, and he was like, how did I not knock you out? And I was like, well, I still need to keep my hands up. I knew I could take a punch, so I was like, fuck it. If I just get hit over here, I can do it. I got to do at least one thing to get you off so I can get my shit back. And he was like, what the fuck? Because he clearly just tried to beat my ass for like 3 rounds, and I was like, oh, I'm just not going to get knocked out for 3 rounds. And that's also like when I told earlier, I was like, yeah, I was kind of like one of those like first gear guys. I was like, okay, this is a fight. What do I do now?
I get hit.
You know, I get hit. Okay, I got to hit back. Okay, this is kind of working. What do I do next? Then it came into like, what should I have done first? And that's when I started to look for, around that time, Jawbreaker Boxing. The original one opened up across from Cary High. I stopped by there a couple times, and I was like, yeah, man, I've done a couple smokers. He's like, you lost him, huh? And I was like, fuck, how'd you know, Paul? Like, and he's like, well, you can't jab. And I was like, that makes sense. And so then being exposed to like day one boxing made me rewatch like boxing and boxing movies and go, fuck you, Rocky, and go, okay, that's wrong, you know, and then go like, and then that got my brain going where I was starting to see how simple some training is. Like, there's a lot you can do with tape on the ground and a piece of string. So if I can only make it to a boxing gym or a kickboxing class like once a week, every other week or something like that, what can I do on my own? And I started to develop like good habits, like going to my mom always loved going to the gym. She was my personal trainer for a while, and I developed like good habits from there. And I was always branching out, trying to find school that I could fit into. And then early on, at 18, I decided to sign up for an MMA fight because my brother was stationed in Virginia Beach. So I also got to go up to the guys.
I'm looking for a gym that I fit into. At this point, I decided to take an MMA fight.
Hey, how many? Do you not run into these people at every goddamn fight, though?
Yeah, for sure.
Or it's like you have to.
Brandon Rollins' first MMA fight was against a guy like this.
Yeah, but it's also like, or you meet people from the gyms like, yeah, that dude comes by and spars, but he hasn't signed a membership. Like, I was.
And he's doing that at like 3 other gyms also.
I was an asshole, but I was also like, I don't know, I kind of want to learn this. Like, I get it. Like, be tough, work harder. Like, and it was at this point, like I finished wrestling my junior year of high school. And I got into judo. I found judo. I fucking loved doing judo. I thought that was I loved judo. That made me really appreciate traditional, like effectively traditional martial arts. Because judo had a great structure and like honor system, just like a belted system.
Yeah.
But man, it's hard as fuck. Like I was like, oh, we are not playing super games. Hard, like I get it. Like I will bow to you because you are about to beat my ass. In wrestling, it's like you got pinned. This is a grown man using you like a mop head to clean the fucking walls and floor with. And I was like, whoa, sick. I like this. So I was doing judo on the regular and hopping to kickboxing and boxing schools, just trying to like find like, you know, there's NBS with like Wes Lomax and all these like, and that's where like Chris Luter came from. And like Rima, like I would go there every now and then. I was like, man, I get it. Like you guys are kind of sparring hard. Like I want to learn how to like apply a jab to a low kick. I want to learn how to like control the ring. And people were always believing in like, you have to fight to get experience. So I was like, okay, I'll look for a fight. Like, and if you go to gyms or states that do have active fight commissions, where at this time, North Carolina didn't have fights in it until 2005.
Holy shit.
Like, no, 2007, I think. 2007.
Oh my God.
Because this is me, 2005, summer after high school. And I decided to take a fight in Virginia Beach, an MMA fight. And I'm like, fuck yeah, man, I'm strong as fuck. Like, I'm young, I'm a badass, I'm a fighter. You know what doesn't make you into a fighter?
Posting wolf memes on Instagram?
Well, that. But this is before the Facebooks, kids. Here's what happens. You know, you get some tips from the guys at Hybrid Training Center that Brennan Vera came out of, and they tell you about a fight going on because every fight needs someone to show up and get their ass beat.
It's true.
Okay. Sure. There's a couple things I learned
dream.
There's a couple things I learned from like kickboxing smokers, competing in judo and wrestling. I was like, okay, like there are ways. The more you learn fundamentals of shit, you can figure shit out.
Right.
I was like, okay, like I can go figure this out. God damn, did I win? Yes, but here's the funny thing that made me realize I was not a man or a fighter. All right, so you guys gonna use elbows today? Bro.
Oh, I know this story well.
Bro.
Now I know what story you're telling.
Bro, like I've told you, yes. Okay, all of a sudden, dude, you talk about a puckered asshole and a dick that crawls inside your balls. Like, oh my god. Because I'm sitting there looking around, going like, oh god, these are men.
You're looking
and
at their elbows.
All of a sudden, I'm looking at these dudes, and I'm like, I am definitely not supposed to be a middleweight, weighing in at 180 pounds, fighting a dude at one. I was like, oh, I came here to. They brought me here to get my ass beat.
Right.
Dude, I mean, I am sitting there having a goddamn panic attack. So I'm watching guys like warm up in the background. I see someone get knocked out with elbows, and I'm just like, fuck am I doing here? And this is also why, like, I got it out of my habit, like, a long time ago to stop calling myself a fighter. I'm an asshole that signed up for a fight and fell in love with the people that were there that were like, hey man, here's some advice. Like, hey dude, do you need me to give you some water? Like, fuck, sure, yes, please, thank God. What the fuck am I doing here? Like, I got to meet a community that was like, yeah, we'll help this dumbass kid. Like, how often do you still see me wrap hands at fights and talk to kids and be like, hey, what do you do? Think about this. Mm-hmm. Like those people, and that's something I fell in love with fighting at an early age. Like, when I saw that, I was like, this is what I'm looking for. Cool, like, where can I find this? Right. At the fights. And so, well, I'll tell you what, like, that goddamn fight, it was over in the first. Starts off with me getting kicked in the head because I fucked up. And I bring this up to this day when I'm coaching classes. Like, I'm like, you cannot tell yourself what you're going to do. Like, you know, this is when I learned, like, what it is to be coached. Because I tell myself, okay, I'm going to walk in and throw a jab. And I'll tell you what that turns into. Me taking 2 steps in, thinking about throwing a jab, and this motherfucker just throws up a head kick. And I'm like, is that the dude's phone? And I shoot at the same time. Because if you actually do get to, like, get some hard sparring and you know how to get rocked, you do get into habits of at least going in for the pocket. All right? So I had done some, like, MMA sparring at the time with other people that had just done, like, wrestling, and we give them boxing gloves kind of shit, you know?
Right,
like,
yeah.
And it was like, well, if I get hit, I'm going to shoot. And that's one of those, like, golden rules that you see, like, across it. If you get hit with something, you better fucking shoot. I shot, I get the guy's leg. Thank God he hadn't wrestled before. I get into the cage, and then I get a hairline fracture in my forearm because I didn't know how to throw an elbow.
So you're hitting him with your forearm?
So instead, I'm just trying to go, God damn it, man. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, where am I? And then I'm getting pulled off, and I still lay on the ground going, I can't stand up. I can't feel my legs. And I'm just like, God damn it, what did I just do? But winning also didn't make sense for me. And this is where I had, like, that personal thing of, like, I was more curious of, like, how do I figure out how to make a fight make sense? Like, you know, and it was like, to me, I was like, oh, it's like through training. Like, you know, I fell in love with, like, that's when I started, like, really thinking about coaching early on. I was like, yeah, I don't see myself being a fighter. Like, I tried to have a couple more MMA fights, and it was all spread out, like, over a couple years in between each fight because there was not much to do around here for a fight scene. I would try to travel to find fights. And, like, that moment really, like, set me on the path of understanding, like, I want to be a coach because, like, I want to be able to, like, help a person figure this out. Because you see people that win fights, and you meet people that really, really want to win fights, you know? And I'm like, oh, shit, that's something special. Where me, I was like, I'm just a dude trying to figure shit out. Where I was like, I don't know, my childhood points me towards, like, stand-up comedy or fighting. And there definitely wasn't a stand-up comedy scene in Raleigh, and, like, I guess there was, but fighting was easier for me to find out.
It's crazy
like,
to think about, like, what the fight scene is now compared to what you described, like, in Raleigh. Like, it's not the greatest in the world by any means, but wow, there's some gems out here now.
Right.
You know? And there's a actual community, like a real strong, solid community with hundreds of people that I've met and still are, you know, follow and are friends with to this day. And, you know, and see, like, people succeed, and then you see people, like, move on from fighting and go into other cool stuff like Bobby and, you know, whatever the case may be. Yeah,
and so, like, that experience, like, that's how a lot of my experiences were coming up. Like, trying to figure out fighting. You know, trying to figure out gyms that I could, like, and it's more of, like, also, like, not to where, like, to fit in. Like, it's good to be, like, to have like-minded teammates and coaches that do want everyone to get better, you know, and that goes a long way for like finding a kind of community to be in for it.
Right.
And it made me really appreciate like while you do train like strength conditioning, while you do train like boxing with one coach. Like there was also like a lot of people always had issues with. Everyone's like, no, you just need to train with me. Where I was always like, you need to train with fucking everybody, you know? Mm-hmm. And you still see that to this day with some coaches and stuff like that. And I was like, no, I need to go train over here for the punch kick. I need to go train over here for the tackle grapple. I need to go over here for the boxing and figuring out ring control. Like, and I was like, I would spend years doing that and trying to figure out what I wanted to do while trying to figure out the military and college. And in 2005 was a weird time around here, man. A really weird time. But yeah, dude.
So 2005 is when you have that fight?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have that fight in Virginia Beach. And
no, it wasn't Virginia Beach. I heard about it through the guys.
That way, okay. So where was it at?
Fucking in a middle
military
school.
Oh, at a middle school. Okay.
In a middle school in bumfuck Virginia.
Okay.
Like, okay, here's the cool thing about Virginia is that there is there's no commission there. You can literally set up a cage and fight. People, like referees in Virginia at the time, were people that morning got asked, like, hey, do you want to ref some fights tonight? Like,
scary.
But that's the reality of the Southeast fight scene.
Even to this day, especially in North Carolina, it's still...
In North Carolina, and like you'll see, it's very primitive. Like, for the longest time, we are once again in another drought, and we don't have a boxing commission.
We call Virginia the land where God does not pay attention, because
and they definitely don't pay attention. Anything fucking goes in Virginia.
Still to this day.
And when I was 21 is when I went into the military, and guess what I found out? In Louisiana and Mississippi, exact same fucking thing, man. Have you seen Dustin Poirier's documentary?
What's it called? Fightville. Yes.
Yeah, and you hear that same thing, and you're like, man, fuck. Like,
right.
But it's also neat because you also, like, actually Mississippi and, like, Virginia probably have a very similar fight scene when you come to think about it. Like, what I saw there, like, I got knocked out in a Muay Thai fight, like, down there. I was like, oh, should have been there either.
That was Lenobo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was the one where you, like, woke up in the locker room.
And like, with my Air Force PT shorts on, I was like, whoops, that's not good. Yeah, my buddy said, like, he got drunk and fell down the escalator at the hotel. And I was like, yeah, that did happen a weekend ago. So, yeah, because it turns out you can get drunk and sign up for a fight in Mississippi. Promoters will go to bars, as we found out, and try to get people to sign up for fights, like they would get people to do for tough man contests. Same thing in Virginia. And so
you can still do tough man contests to this day. You know, really shady type shit. You know?
So I got into a Muay Thai fight.
Shout out to Josh Oxenford.
I got into a Muay Thai fight by drunkenly bar hopping one weekend, and they were like, "Yeah, there's because there was a fight night going on, so I'm hammered drunk, and I'm just like, yeah, fuck it, I'll fight." Signed up for a Muay Thai fight.
Hammered.
Hey,
when they called your name, were you still pretty fucked up?
No. Like this happened 2 weeks later.
Okay. So you were out bar hopping, drunk, and were coerced into a Muay Thai fight / your liquid courage.
So it was a MMA show, and I was like, can I do a fucking Muay Thai fight? And they went, yeah, fuck it, we'll find somebody. I was like, yeah, we got a gym like Muay Thai fighters, we'll get you. And I went, cool.
Thanks. All right.
Man, as it turns out, like when I'm sitting there going like, yeah, I got this, and I see someone coming out, and they start actually coming out like full headband and everything.
Bangkok ready.
I'm like, man,
they're doing in the corner.
Man, I did it to myself again, and it was like one of those like less funny like let me tell you about how I got here, because like it was I woke up and how the fuck did I get here kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not. It's
like one of those things like I learned in that fight that like it is as fun as this is, it is also not a game. And like, you know, I had fights that I won, and I was like, how did I win that?
Yeah.
You know, like I fought in Raleigh once. And I was just like, I remember that fight, I did nothing but Muay Thai for that fight. And it was an MMA fight inside a boxing ring. And dude, that was 2008, 2009 maybe?
Do you remember when there were MMA fights in Raleigh? Fuck.
Yeah.
That was a fun time.
Yeah, it was a great time. You know how much I enjoyed like going to a weigh-in, then going back to my house, taking a nap, and going to the... Oh, it was also a day of weigh-ins here.
That's true, too.
Even
when I got into the scene, that was still the case.
In Mississippi, I found the hard way of like, oh shit, like, if you train hard, and like you do the right shit, and like you find the right people, like, you can like enjoy doing this, because I was still kind of like that. I was very honest with myself, where I was like, man, I'm definitely not a world fucking champion, but I do need to figure out the ins and outs of this, because there's one thing I did love. It is like the training process, and it's still like that little bit of like, oh well, I do need to be on weight. Okay, I do need to not drink for a couple weeks. Like, I do need to lock the fuck back into a couple things. Like, and that little bit does go a long way. But just that doesn't get you ready for a fight. It's the right drilling, the right training, the right pad work, and having that to help adjust your mentality to what you want to do with this helps you go the direction you want to go.
Right.
Where back then it was very much just like, it was a whole lot of people going, I don't know, but let's find out. And
bite down on your mouthpiece and let's find out.
Let's find out.
Yeah.
And you know, that helped me go like, okay, well, I definitely don't want to be a fighter. Like, that shit fucking sucked. Like, that kind of aspect. You know, like, okay, if I do focus on doing jiu-jitsu every day, if I do focus on my bag rounds, my conditioning rounds, my sparring rounds, the right rounds of sparring, up, down, in, out, then like I could go do an MMA fight. And then it still came down to like me overdoing Muay Thai for my MMA fight, because I was still mad at how I did in a Muay Thai fight. Even though I moved back here, I ended up getting a great Muay Thai coach, but I was still having to piece together a lot of the MMA. But that's where like I had friends like Chris Bright and Robbie Adams helping me out a ton back then, where they were still trying to figure this out on the fly as well. And I was just going like, okay. And that turned into a fight where it's like, oh man, just because I grew up wrestling, doing judo, and I still do jiu-jitsu every day, like, I still need to put that into my full sparring, where I was doing way more Muay Thai. All my sparring was just Muay Thai sparring for this. And all my jiu-jitsu was just jiu-jitsu for this. So I wasn't very comfortable like the in and the out.
At mixing.
Yes, and I had spin times of like helping people, like where if like, and like we would all get into a fight, like it's like, hey shit, I guess I'm gonna fight in 3 weeks. Like, why? Well, fuck, I don't know, I got nothing else to do. And like we just put in some wall rounds, and like we were still figuring it out as we went. So, but
yeah, it's like making a very complex like cake or recipe where you've got your flour, you've got your eggs, you've got your milk, you've got your sugar.
Yeah.
But if you put all of those things in at the same time and just kind of like haphazardly shook them around, you probably wouldn't end up with a very good final product.
Couldn't even turn it into a microwave mug cake.
The techniques
you know?
of how to incorporate these ingredients.
And that's still and shit. Like what I love about MMA and combat sports and boxing and anything that is competitive, like that changes every year.
Yeah, the meta is a constant evolving.
Man,
thing.
sometimes you got to put the sugar first before the flour.
You gotta pour the milk before
Some
the
people
syrup.
need the flour before the sugar. Like, everyone's fucking different. And it comes with, like, how you meet that person first day at the gym.
Yeah.
Like, hey, man, what do you want to do? Oh, well, like, you don't want to fight, but you want to train? Okay, cool. You're going to learn how to be a teammate.
Especially after...
Oh, like, okay, you want to be a fighter? I'm going to hold you accountable. Show up here tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., and get ready to run. Like,
there's so many years of training and coaching. You've probably seen people come into the gym from all walks of life and all kinds of mechanical backgrounds, like Talia with her
Jeff
dance
Loken,
background.
my best friend to this day, I met him on a Thursday because a WEC fight was on a Wednesday. Remember those?
Yeah.
They're on Versus Channel?
Yeah, they were
so that was Jeff Loken's first time watching MMA. I think he is 19 years old at NC State. He had just moved here from Wilmington, and he walks into the gym that I'm working at. And at this time, it was like I was just coming off of shoulder surgery, I remember. And I was like still working a lot of southpaw stuff. And this kid comes in going like, yeah, I saw some fights on TV and I saw this was down the street, so I figured I'd just come in and train. And I was like, man, fuck this guy. Because I was like, and I was just kind of being a hater because that was Trevor at 21, I think. I think we're 2 years apart, where I was still like, no, 20.
And you're just like, I'm an old man compared
No,
to
like where I was just like, man, I'm doing everything. Like, what do you mean you just walked in? And I was like, well, I guess I was that kind of asshole. Like, but like, there wasn't a gym to really walk into and say that back then.
Right.
So, and I was like, all right, fuck it. And then I think Jeff was like sparring on his first day. Like, he was that kind of guy. And I remember going like, oh, who the fuck is this guy? Like, it's your first day and you're sparring? Why? And he's like, I play football. And I was like, what the fuck? And like, I'm just beating the shit out of this dude, but he's just in there swinging. And I'm like, oh shit, is he just one of those guys? And like Jeff Loken, like his brother Trevor, are guys that can just fucking fight.
He's just about it.
I was sick. And so that's when it came into like, so you want to fight, huh? And he's like, yeah, cool. And I was like, okay, well, this is punching and takedowns. Let's do it. And he was like, okay. And like, we became buddies. Like, we weren't friends at all when we first started training. We were just teammates. And I was like, who is this stubborn motherfucker, like, rolling so goddamn hard his first day? And it just turned into like, well, I've got some more experience. I'm just going to keep, like, out wrestling you and and just doing shit. I was
just
like, you are a stubborn motherfucker.
Couple old punch pals.
Like, we really are, man. Like, it is so weird to talk to him. Like, still, like, as a cop, where I'll be like, hey, man, what's your legal advice on this? He's like, you're a fucking idiot still. And I'm like, thanks, man. Like, you know, like,
appreciate you.
Yeah, like, but like Jeff was like, yeah, like that was a fun time. Yeah, man, it's been a weird scene around here. But like that, but that's like something like at a young age, I was like, yeah, this is like the kind of shit that people need in their lives. Sometimes,
right.
like, you don't. I learned through it, like, you don't need to be a fighter. You don't even have to call yourself a fighter.
No.
You just have to be fucking honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was around, like, Jeff Loken's age, before I, like, at that time when I was joining the military, like, I got to meet Chris Bright and Robbie Adams. And I was like, that's when I'm a fighter, blah, blah, blah. No, I was an asshole that won, like, a fight off of sheer luck.
So when did you start?
But they were like, oh, you're a fighter?
Coaching Jeff. Because I know that
I was just his teammate for the longest.
Okay.
I transitioned to coaching Jeff when the Muay Thai gym we were at closed down. Let's see, like, he took some time off from school, or he took some time off from fighting after he lost. He went 5-0, like, real quick,
mm-hmm.
and then lost a fight, and then took some time off, then came back to fighting, and I was still his teammate in his return fight, and then he took some more time off after that, and that's when I coached him for the title. So he had a return fight and a title fight.
So how long?
And that's when I was his still, like, sparring partner, and his, like, I became, like, his sparring partner. I was cornering him and he was listening to. Like, I wasn't calling him, like, Jeff was like, yeah, he showed me how to wrestle and pin that guy into the wall, and I was like, I guess I did. Like, I'm just your buddy that spars with you and gives you advice.
Right.
And, like, so I didn't see myself as a coach. I was like,
more like partners in a way.
Yeah. I was like, okay, well, this dude wants to fight. And, like, here's the thing about Jeff that I knew. I was like, this motherfucker can just put gloves on and go fight. He can just get off the couch and go fight.
Right.
And I learned, like, there are people out there like that, you know. And I think I was about 24 around then, and that's when he had his return fight and a couple title fights. And that's when I was kind of like, that's when I was like really starting my foray, I guess, into coaching. Because before that, even I was still someone. So, funny story about Trevor. Once I found that first fight that I was at 18. I found out that if you can show up with gauze and tape, you can just get into fights for free. So you're there to wrap hands. So that's something I haven't even gone back to yet. I jumped, okay, because you see me every time I go to fights, so I'm still there to do what? Fucking wrap hands,
yes.
dude. So I found out the easiest way to go to fights or find out about gyms would go, like, because at 18, I started traveling to other gyms to try and cross-train in, like, South Carolina, in Virginia, going out to Wilmington and stuff like that. And that's when I started going, like, oh shit, there are, like, other places to go train at. I just happen to live in fucking Raleigh and I like it there. Like, there's no reason to not live in Raleigh, even back then. Yeah. Like, there's always work to be had. It's not a bad place to live.
I've been all over the United States, at least. I haven't done a lot of international travel.
Hey, I'll tell you what, like,
I've been in every major city in the US.
When you're a teenager and you start going to really small podunk towns for fights, and you meet people of, like, all backgrounds, similar backgrounds to you, the same kind of, like not having shit except just, like, all right, got wrestling practice. Like, yeah. You meet those same people, so I got to, like, go to other gyms. I found out about fights, and I'd be like, okay, cool, I'll show up with gauze and tape. Had to learn how to wrap hands along the way. But yeah, like, with Jeff Loken, like, that was, like, my first foray into, like, coaching. Because even then, I was still teaching myself, okay, like, people need to hold pads for people. Like, I was, like, learning how to hold pads for people at gyms and figuring it out on the fly. But then, like, with Jeff Loken, we're kind of just like, hey, you should do this.
Right.
It was like, okay, I have some experience. I'm definitely not good, but it's like, here's what I see that you can do better. Here's what we see from this guy's couple fights. Let's work on this with the pads, like punch, punch, shoot. You know, and that became my first foray into coaching. I was like, oh, that advice works. I'm like, oh, neat. Yeah, like, and even back when I was cornering, like, wrapping hands, I was cornering people, but I was more like, man, you should stop getting hit. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and that's because, like, that was my knowledge of it at the time. Yeah, it's a long fucking. I tell people, man, like, in this sport, like, and it's not even a sport that got to, like, now it's a sport.
Yeah.
It was a clusterfuck.
yeah.
Bro.
It slowly evolved
It was like my home life. Like, I don't know if I want to sleep outside or in the car tonight. Well, good news, like, if you're used to it, you can go sleep in the car and train at the gym the next day.
It's it's in kind of an in-between phase now, where it definitely is a sport at the highest level.
Depending on where you're at.
Right. At the highest level and in a lot of cities.
It's an organized clusterfuck around here. So.
Yeah.
Because we have no regular fights and stuff like that. Yeah. Definitely. Like, if you want to fight on the regular, go to Florida. Like, we had to go there a bunch.
Yeah.
Got to be there. Virginia. Yeah. But it's also like DC, like Philly, Pittsburgh. Vastly wild but similar scenes. Like you see like a huge change, like the boxing for the Muay Thai up there, and that's things I got to learn because like you have guys coming from DC to meet in Virginia. So I meet these guys in DC, and I still go up to DC and box and train and spar and stuff like that, and that got to help me kind of go like, man, I see what you're doing, but this way works better. I'm just like, I just want to live in fucking Raleigh.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's why I never found like a comfortable home. I mean, I had like a couple gyms I've trained at for a while around here, but it's always been like I kind of have my way of picking up experience and going with it. And like I try to tell people like the number one thing you can recognize is like 4 years ain't shit. No. If you're young, 4 years feels like a long time because you were just in high school. I'll tell you this, my first 2 years of high school felt like forever. My last two, I couldn't wait to fucking get through because I knew what I was going to try and set out and do for the rest of my life. And I tell people like there's a big difference in like finding martial arts at a young age because you definitely get to help realize like how far ahead everything is in front of you. Like, because I knew down the road, I was like, okay, if I start learning how to coach now, because there was a long time, like, I like it. Like, I see coaches, like, I see them as a very vital role, like a martial arts instructor. And I was like, yeah, I want to do that. Like, that makes sense. But I knew, like, experience is what you need. And then, like, when you're ready for it, you start doing it. And then eventually it became down to, like, hey, I got to move. You're going to teach here, and you're a coach now. And I'm like, oh, shit, I guess I'm a coach now because a respected coach called me a coach. Now, other respected coaches are calling me a coach. And I'm like, is I coach?
Yeah, there's
pretty sure I'm an asshole. Like,
there's no definitive moment where someone hands you a certificate and it's like you are now a coach. You know, it's only only you can really know that.
Like, I have friends that aren't honest to God fighters that are like, yeah, you're. I'm like, I don't like that word to describe myself because I'm just not. Like, I'm just a fucking idiot.
Right.
Like, I'm like that pro surfer. I'm like that guy that can fucking rip a wave but doesn't want to be a pro surfer. Like, they're out there. You know, like. I just kind of learned a long time ago. I was like, oh, like, if you really truly fall in love with something, you really learn how to like look ahead at it differently. And I say to this day, like, come 80 or 85, I'm going to wake up, eat potatoes and eggs for breakfast, go to the gym, tell someone how to jab, and then die. Like, and I was
die
like...
immediately.
Die immediately. I was like, I just gave you the perfect jab. Farewell. Like, bye.
It's been a good run.
Good luck, teenager. Have you seen Old Yeller? I'm fucking out. And I'm just like, or I fade off. Like,
just take me behind the uppercut bag and kill me.
But yeah, it's like, I try to tell people, like, hey, man, like, even if you are, like, finding yourself, like, you're turning, like, 21, maybe you've still spent, like, 4 years in this. Yeah. You have a long way to fucking go, man.
So long.
Like, don't convince, like, don't call yourself a fighter until other fighters are calling you a fighter. A lot of fighters have called me an asshole, and guess what? They're not fucking wrong.
Yeah.
I also never tried to call myself like for a little bit, and then like the sparring day the next day made me realize, oh fuck, I'm probably not a fighter because this guy kind of reminds me of the other fighter guys. And I'm like, shit, maybe I'm not as much as this guy as I am.
There's even people
but I learned I can be a teammate.
Several amateur fights on their record that I would say are not fighters. It's just it's not for them.
Yeah. But and then you'll see the people that are pro fighters that become honest with going like, yeah, there's like high level fighters and there's guys like me that can, like, and I don't say me personally, but like Smiling Sam Alvey. That guy's a fucking fighter. Is he a world champion? No. But his ability to say fuck it and go out
to that level.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
what's the guy's name?
Like, I do know a lot of like world class amateurs that are like true to God fighters, but they just enjoy like the fighting aspect of it. They love the discipline and they love seeing the improvements in their daily lives outside of it. Like, they are still a fighter.
What's the guy's name around here that has like the worst record of all time? Is it Jay Ellis that fought at Next Level Fight Club?
No, that dude's from Wisconsin.
Dude, that guy's a fighter?
He's 8-99, right?
Yeah, that guy's a fucking fighter.
Yeah. This man's record is, I think, 8-99.
That man fights. This guy fights.
That man, if you can show up and get hit that many goddamn times,
and
you got some fight on you.
Still show up with abs, and looking good, and you know, and doing techniques in there. Not like he's a complete wash. Yeah. You know, it's I think that it comes at a moment where only you can know if you are or not, or if it's extremely obvious to everybody watching, like. A fight that's 3 rounds, very tough, and people have to like Brandon Spencer at Fight For It, who got his ass beat for 3 rounds and then landed a liver shot.
The best thing, like, for people to learn from fighting sometimes is that they are not a fighter.
That's true.
Because if I had tried to lie and convince myself, and like trust me, like I have lied to myself about trying to convince myself that I'm a fighter and I'm gonna maul this guy, but I'm like, nah, man, I should be jabbing right now. Like this isn't a fighter's mentality. This is just like a curious idiot's. Like I'm like, oh, school isn't anything that fascinates me. Like figuring out how to jab this person in the middle of a fight, I'm curious to learn about. Like
so
I learned through fighting.
At this point,
way.
you're like, you know, other coaches are calling you a coach, and you're like,
no. So
I'm
this
on
is
this road.
I realized that like my first like. Even like before my first full-time coaching thing, I was like I remember like I moved to Myrtle Beach. I got into the Myrtle Beach fight scene, so we'd go down for like the warfare shows, and then at that time I'd also like just travel to other people's gyms. Like they had a jiu-jitsu gym, needed someone to come and hold pads. I'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll come down. Like we'll bring some guys down and spar. And I didn't see myself as a coach. I was just showing up, going like, hey, who wants to hit
facilitating?
Yeah, like because I knew like I wanted to one day be like a martial arts coach. Like I saw that, I was like, oh, that's a very real thing, and that's why I've always tried to like figure out like every aspect that I can. Like people say like, yeah, when he talks about fighting, he just gets it. And I go, I'll take your word for it. And I start trying to groom around like what I do and do not know. And then that came down to like coaching. They're like, man, you're giving good advice. You're cleaning up my technique. Like thanks. You're making it more responsive. And I'm like, well, shit. Why the fuck can't I do it? And it came down to that. Well, yeah, I'm just not a fighter. I'm just a dude that was dumb enough to climb inside of a ring or a cage just a couple times and go, fuck me, man. Like, not my thing, I guess, but everyone says I'm good at holding pads, I'm good at sparring, I'm good at being a teammate. I'll work on those. And that was still, like, that's what crafted my way of, like, coaching that I do now. And, yeah, so that, and it's funny, I really started coaching my own guys. It was probably at East Coast Boxing. This is after Jeff had won titles. I just moved back from Myrtle Beach, and I started to work with Evan Arredondo at that gym. And also in that same group was a group of friends.
He's like 15, 16 at this time? I mean, how old?
17, 18.
Yeah, I was about to say, he got in pretty young.
He was 17 or 18 at this time. Like he might...
So this is like...
He had just had... He had 6 months of training.
9 years ago now?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay.
Like it's around 9 years ago.
Okay.
And then also in that same group was Travis Petraba, who just won gold at the Muay Thai Worlds. He's going to represent us for like the Muay Thai Olympics now. He made a huge, like, has a huge like come up in Muay Thai right now, and like that's when I was like starting to have like my own. I was teaching cardio classes at this gym that had a boxing ring, and I went, "Is it cool if I spar in here?" And like that's how I got a job there. And I started to bring in other people. Like funny story, Cody Multai used to when he had moved back. Cody, he would come by and we would put gloves on and do some Dutch drilling and shit like that because he was fresh from Vegas, and so we'd go back and forth on striking and MMA stuff all the time. With other guys like
he probably had a plethora of knowledge.
Duke Dupree was there as well. Like he was from California. He's now a brown belt out of Gracie Raleigh. Tony Sosrez at one point popped up shop in there to teach. So we got just like this fun like transition of it kind of being like, yeah, it's like there for soccer moms to work out, but like a couple of assholes showed up one day just to borrow the boxing ring. We kind of like started coaching fighters out of there. And it was very similar to like what happened when like Jeff Loken first walked into like LA boxing. When I was being this new crop, but like I had like their coaches were telling me to coach them. Like, hey, go to Trevor, drive 2 hours to Trevor, listen to him. Tommy Kawazi would come up and train.
That's like an 11-year-old child.
He was 15. So Tommy Kawazi was 15, coming up with teammates from that gym to train. Like, and it's wild to see where some of these kids are at now. But that was when I really first started realizing, I was like, oh shit, I guess I am coaching now. And that's when I started training like a teenage girl who just wanted to get into kickboxing for fun. Then she got into like sparring slowly. Then I took her by like a friend's like small program in Cary. It was John Reese, who was a longtime Muay Thai coach. And then like he saw my student like coming in like sweeping his adults, and he was like, "Trevor, what the fuck is this?" I'm like, "Oh no, it's just a young pissed off kid. Like she wants."
But it was
to
all those elements. It was all that time.
But it was like that time of like understanding. Like okay, well like if you're gonna train someone from scratch, like I was starting to get people from scratch. And my like in Myrtle Beach, when I helped the gym out down there, like that was my first exposure to really work with people from scratch. To maybe think about them fighting one day. And I was like, oh shit, what do you need to know? And like that got that gear going. And that like then like your experience fills in, and then you start me just being me. I start looking for other ways to fill in what I need to know to show this person how to jab better. How do I make them step better? Like what did I do that helped me make sense of it? What can you do? Like here's what I did. Now do it this way. Let's create drills for it to work. And that slowly became, and then Forge Fitness in Cary, where John Reese was at, he handed that off to me. He was like, man, it's time for you to fucking coach. And I was like, okay. And so that was 27, I think. Fuck. Yeah. So I think I started becoming I became, to myself, at 27, technically a full-time coach, because it's what was paying my bills, running the program, selling memberships for it, doing privates full-time. That's when coaching really became my full-time thing, and I had stopped my second time around at Cage Side, because I was working part-time at East Coast Boxing, part-time at Cage Side. Occasionally, dude, when I worked for Cage Side, that's a whole other fucking saga of stories. I would travel with U.S. Grappling, every fucking weekend, into Chicago, out of state.
Just slinging gear.
Just slinging gear. Getting to meet a lot of people in the MMA community, or the jiu-jitsu community that were looking for striking coaches. And I was like, dude, I don't do jiu-jitsu, man, but I'll hold pads for you. What's up? And I'd meet up with dudes, after the tournaments, before the tournaments, after weigh-ins. I'd go to check out their gym, or I'd train on Sunday with them. And I got to, really open up. People are like, how do you know people, Trevor? I'm like, I've always been on the road for fights or jiu-jitsu tournaments.
Right.
I've always been trying to network and meet other coaches and meet people to figure out how do you do this? I've always been a curious little student of the game. And so about 27 is when I became an actual full-time coach.
And at this time, you said you were working at East Coast Boxing, Cage Side. When did you...
And bouncing.
And bouncing, of course. So you're doing anything you can, basically, to keep the lights on.
Yeah, but I was also living in places where we had 4 of the roommates.
Right.
I've always.
That's what
been
you do when you're 27, though.
But I've always been that way. Even you see me now, I'm very much just I don't give a shit. I don't need much.
Right. I'm the same.
Tolly and I are very we get along. We're always we don't need to go do anything fancy. I don't need to go on an overpriced vacation. I get to go on fight trips. I get to go catch up with friends.
Those are my times.
And so I've always lived a very simple nomadic little life, because I've always just been traveling for fighting and doing martial arts. But that was a wild time and that really helped me see the different future of how do you then turn coaching into a business. And that helped me piece together the elements of when I would work a front desk at other gyms to pay for my membership there. And I would do some clients out of there.
Because during
train.
That next
and that was my early 20s. That was my early 20s when I was doing that behind the desk with stuff.
27 to 30, around the time that you're turning probably 29
because that
or 30
first year
is when
at
we
Forge
meet.
Fitness.
Right, I was about to say that's when you watched Chance, right?
No.
That was told many years later.
No, yeah, that was after my Forge Fitness saga. Is when I started Chance.
Yeah,
my first year in Forge Fitness is when Evan Arredondo won Worlds in Florida and stuff like that for kickboxing, and I was like, oh shit, I'm a kickboxer, and I started getting other fighters from other gyms that were MMA guys that were like, I want to fight in kickboxing, and I was like, okay, and that's when the IKF was starting to show
you up specifically.
Yeah, because I was like, well, I took it, so I took my program. I was like, I made a really good barter with the owner, and I was like, okay, so I heard you have money. Here's what you're gonna do. You're going to go ahead and pay me 3 months of my rent for my apartment, so I don't have to worry about this, because I have enough clients I can bring over from East Coast Boxing that I can feed myself. I'm getting X amount of money from teaching 2 Muay Thai classes a week. And I laid out to the owner, I was like, look, you will pay me for these new classes I'm going to set in once I get to these membership goals, because it's beneficial for both of us. And he just goes, okay, I'm sold. And it went from 2 days a week to 5 noon classes and beginning and advanced classes every Friday, or Monday through Friday. And then I would run fighter practices. When I met Adley's, when I started running MMA practices, and that led off into another other chapter and part of life as well. Right. But yeah, 27 is when I started to learn oh, how do I make coaching into a business? Because I had a lot of experience of being around independent gym owners. Yeah. Being around people that knew how to make a living full time off of just fighting. I knew a lot of fighters that worked as personal trainers, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, you can make good money doing that. And I was like, well, I don't want to fight, so I'll take other time and bounce in my free time and work with my clients and shit like that. And I started really learning the business of coaching for me, which I'm one of those I like to spend as much time in there as possible. If you want to do this, you have to want to be in there every day. And since I was a teenager, I'm in there from 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. taking a nap in the back if need be. And that's
on the mats.
On the mats. I'll still do it to this day. And that's one thing that I've always had that mindset of how do I do stuff? Well, I just keep doing it until I'm tired and I need to sleep. and then I'll do it some more.
Just taking a little snooze on a Thai pad somewhere.
And then I'd sometimes also just party way too fucking much on the weekends, but I grew out of that.
Yeah, definitely.
But and then Chance started up when I realized like I needed to be getting paid more for what I am doing at that gym, where
so
it
you're
then
like
became into
creating a business inside of a gym that's already established.
I was
creating
just
your own program that's more.
I was learning I was studying a lot at the time, and like learning how to build a Muay Thai program,
right?
And like learning, okay, what do I teach for like this is how I teach fundamentals. I should structure it this way. If a person is starting day one, how do I have them like drilling, sparring ready in like 6 months? Now I have that down to more like 2 months. Like hell, some people just spar the first week if they can. But no, like I started to learn like a lot of like ways of going like, no, fuck, if I just do it my way, then I can make it work. And like if people don't like my way of doing it, well, tough shit. And, like because I see like that there is like if I'm making more money off of it and people are still getting better, then it's like, oh neat, like it's working, obviously. And that's just like I started like learning how to stick to my guns and stuff. Then also I learned a lesson of like I need to be getting paid for the time that I'm doing. If I at that point I was also like having to run the front desk because the owner wasn't properly training front desk people. They were overloading them. He was underpaying them. I was making good money because I kept 100% of my privates. So I was making just I didn't know what to do with my
private money, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and however I really wasn't making money. I was still getting my money for classes. I wasn't getting money for memberships signed up. I wasn't getting paid for making sure the gym was clean and stuff like that. Like, and I was like, oh, dude, these are like not what I'm supposed to be doing. And then it started to get to like, I was the only person running that spot. I was having to pay people like Bobby, who was up here at the time, like before, like when he moved up from Winston, like I was trying to get him a job at the gym, and I was having to pay him to cover classes when I was too busy signing up jiu-jitsu students and CrossFit students. And I'm like, no, this isn't my fucking job. Like I'm helping out because I'm trying to be nice.
You're like holding the place up.
And like the owner just really wasn't being an owner, and I was really upset with that. And I was like, you know, like I started butt heads, and that's when I rented some mat space at a martial arts school, literally a stuff throw away, because I didn't want my Muay Thai students to stop doing jiu-jitsu either.
Yeah.
And so like all my guys that wanted to stay there and pay jiu-jitsu, I was like, dude, just pay me $100, because this person at the martial arts school was like, they charged me practically nothing. Like it was like, yeah,
to have the mat space
and use the facility. And at that point, then I moved a mile like up the street from there, and I was like, oh, this is fucking rad. And that's when I truly was like, yeah, no, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And that's when I was like, okay, this is me learning how to really do just coaching on my own. And that's when I started doing like seminars. Like even at Forge Fitness Cary, I started to travel and do like small seminars and stuff like that. Yeah. That's when I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to try and just market myself. Like this is fun. And I just started to really just keep loving what I do. Yeah, and like that, the Chance saga took me like all over to Florida, Philly, California. Like that's when I was going like all over, and I was like, Trevor, Trevor, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm just doing it, man. I don't know. Like, I'm holding pads. People are getting their hands raised. I'm paying my bills. I'm trying to figure it out as we go. Like
chasing that neon rainbow, living that honky tonk
chasing the dragon, man.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just been like the coolest fucking ride. Yeah. Like, and I still have so much more to do.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of just getting started with a brand new chapter, really, with Hometown and everything.
Yeah, because I don't see anything as ever being too like you can't be too stuck in one spot with something. Like I have had to learn the importance of roots. It seems like my roots here in Raleigh specifically, because I have tried to like move away to more active fight scenes like Florida, where I'm like, shit, man, Myrtle Beach even, dude. Mm-hmm. And then I was trying to get gigs out in California, and that's when I was going like, well, shit, what do I do with this? So that's when I ended up moving to Florida instead. But it was like, oh shit, like I just like that's when I realized my roots of Raleigh are still what made me the coach I am. And I was traveling to a lot of states and working with guys that were like to us like California fighters, like fuck, those are the best. Why? Because they just say they are. However, like when I went out there, I was like, oh, we can beat these guys. Like fuck, man, I know more than some of these guys that are like our coaches that are winning fights out here. I was like, oh fuck, like we can do this shit. And that's when I started to really realize like my roots are really important. Like I moved to Florida, it was to be a better coach. But I was still getting wins against other really good coaches, and I was like, well, fuck, like these people are getting better, I'm getting better, and then like these guys were like, well, you were a good coach in Raleigh, what the fuck? And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Like I was still like the only thing that got in my way is like, you know, myself. And then like coming back and still trying to run like help someone run a business turn into the wrong thing, where it's like I can't work for somebody else. I have to work for myself. Yeah. And there's one thing that I've never, I've doubted myself for a long time, and especially with everything in fighting. But it's I'll still give it a shot.
Right.
Just like coaching, I was like, there's no way to know if I'm a good coach or not until I start coaching. So I really learned how to start betting on myself a bit more, trust your fucking gut a bit more.
I think by that point though, most people kind of, even if you didn't feel that way.
Well, even me, I'm just such a self-detrimental kind of person where it's because whenever I see an improvement, I never saw when my hand got raised, I was never do I want to chase that improvement, or do I want to chase just understanding fighting? I was kind of just looking at it differently, and it was weird. I just started to go people were saying man, you hit hard, man, you do this well. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing, so I didn't believe it. And the same thing for coaching, where I was I don't know, I'm just telling these people what to do. Is that coaching? Oh, I guess it is. Oh fuck, maybe I am good at this. And then I said, you find out you're a coach when other really fucking good coaches call you a coach, and I'm oh, okay, so I do have my shit figured out. But then me being me, I was
that's literally
how do I get okay, you told me I'm a good coach, how do I become a better coach?
That's literally how I met
you told me people told me you're great at sales. I'm am I? How do I get better at sales now? Am I good at managing a business now that I own a business? Oh fuck, I need to get way better.
Yeah.
And Talia's helped me keeping everything organized in books, where she was you know what you're talking about, you just never took your backpack to school. And I'm nailed it.
There you go. Yeah.
I just wanted to hold pads.
Never had a binder, just loose leaf paper in the bag.
But when I run other people's gyms, I'm just oh yeah, filing. I get what needs to be organized. I understand the process of the bread and butter of what needs to go instead of martial arts. Martial arts is very bread and butter.
Because the way that I met you was Cody introduced me to you and said, "This is Trevor. He's one of the best striking coaches in the area."
Whenever I hear people say that, still, I'm still just that was 5 years,
5.5 years ago.
And people in California will still say yeah, you're a good coach. Places I just go to for a fight, and and they're you're a good coach, and I'm like, man, fuck what everybody else says. I guess if these good coaches,
the proof is in the motherfucking pudding, and your pudding is delicious. You got fighters winning all over the place. But
it's one of those where I'm also
for your students.
And now I've realized, now that I do have time to build my own program, I see this process all over again because I have this crop. I have this crop of Piper, who's a junior in high school and just had her first kickboxing match. You want to know what made me feel like I had a fucking cane in my hand? Is watching a teenager have the same fucking fight I had as a fucking kid, going, fighting is relentless, and it just teaches you how brutal it is. And I knew that, but man, what if and literally me being twice her age now,
is a flat circle.
Fuck me, bro. It's one of those things where But now I love the process of okay, what do I teach my day ones if they do want to be a fighter? What do I teach my day one if they're just trying to be a martial artist? And this is from that what can I offer you of my product? And that's another thing of that I learned through sales of if you understand what you can do with martial arts, you can absolutely make coaching your full-time thing. Dude. Because I coach guys for boxing, kickboxing, Muay Thai, MMA, and I'm just I'll go to a jiu-jitsu tournament and yell something out, and they're well fuck, he's not wrong, and I'm thanks.
I think that it would be very appropriate to end the show with this particular.
I feel like we just had a Joe Dirt moment.
Oh, maybe, yeah, maybe this is our Joe Dirt, our Joe Dirt moment. What's the WKB where he's on with God? What's the actor's name? Yeah, that's so funny. Tom DeBlass, who's one of the best grappling coaches of all time, probably. He had a post the other day that I think really. Surmises the true coach's mentality. It says, "Last night I opened a DM from someone who was interested in running a school yet did not feel accomplished. However, I went to his page and scrolled down and realized that he was a black belt, he had a great sense of and depth of knowledge, and he truly wanted to make the world a better place. I said all this to him and he said to me, 'Well, I haven't won anything.' My response is, 'So what?' Then he said, 'I haven't created any champions,' and my response was, 'The definition of a champion can be debated. Are you looking to create jiu-jitsu champions, or perhaps just help someone accomplish their goals by losing weight, relieving stress, or helping someone who's depressed find a purpose? Understand that if you are a student of the game, and if you truly love jiu-jitsu, or in this case Muay Thai, anything really, if you truly want to help others and care about their well-being, if you put your time in on the mats, you are more than capable to teach. You do not need to be famous, or be a champion, or sell instructional DVDs. You have something to offer by caring so much.'" And I thought that was
I need to give a shout out
really
to
great.
Jason Farrell of Level Up, because he was someone that like I really like. I saw what he was doing with the USA Muay Thai scene. I got to see him at fights, and then I was like, "Fuck it, I'll bring my fighters up like Roland Mizell." After 6 months of training, took him up to a smoker, and I was like, "I got to meet this guy, Jason Farrell," and like that's how we got in touch. And like one day, like I was like, "Man, I'm like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing wrong here." He's like, "You're not doing anything wrong. You're just doing the real fucking work. Like no one likes this glamour side of it." He's like, "Are guys getting hands raised?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are your bills getting paid?" "Yeah." "Are you getting people in there?" "Yeah." "Are people live changing?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You're doing it." Chris Clodfelter has said the same thing to me. Like, we're that someone where it's like, we were teammates, we never, like, we've parted ways with stuff like that because, like, you know, everyone goes off in different aspects. Where he was definitely, he's so far ahead of, like, the coaching curve for a lot of people around here, so he's always been, like, a great source of, like, knowledge, and we've got to, like, share corners together and corner against each other. And even he has said, he's like, "You're doing the damn thing." Like, there's no denying it. Like, no matter what you have or have not done, if you're doing it, you're doing it.
That's right.
And that's the
So go do it. We ran out of time today. I promise I'll tell my story on the next episode. It'll also give us something to talk about because we ain't going to be talking about that Holly Holm card probably. So with that being said, guys, like I said, we have social media now. So please, especially on Facebook, go find us, give us a like. It would really mean a lot to us. Other than that, just enjoy your fights and enjoy yourselves. This is the 10-8 Fightcast. Thanks for tuning in.
What time is it?
Yeah.
What time is it?
It's 5:15.
Oh, shit.